Mr. Kip Sorensen, happy belated Merry Christmas, all that kind of stuff. Happy New Year, happy holidays, happy Kwanzaa, Merry whatever it is people celebrate. Happy holidays.
Merry
Good to
Christmas.
see you, brother.
Yeah. Thank you.
Merry
Thank
Christmas.
you.
That's just the right thing to say. Just Merry Christmas and Happy New Year.
Just Merry
That
Christmas.
is also acceptable.
Yeah, for
It's
sure.
good to see you, man. Go ahead.
I enjoyed what are those tricycle things that you guys were playing with? I saw that post last night. I was
so
like,
awesome.
that looks so fun.
So we've got a lot of the guys know, obviously, because you've been up here, but we've got this big barn. And when what we call our event season shuts down, we just clear everything out. Everything's put away and whatnot. My second son got a slack line for Christmas, so we set that up. But then my two youngest kids got those little drifting tricycles, razor tricycles or something. I don't even know what they're called.
Yeah.
And we were just doing tricycle races last night in the barn and just tearing it up. Obviously, it's way too small for me. So I'm kind of thinking I might need to get one for myself, one big enough for myself. But I beat my oldest son. My daughter beat me by like 3 inches. And then my second son, I don't think I've raced him yet. He's the reigning champion, so I still need to race him. But we had a good time.
Yeah. Yeah. He's on the leaderboard to be determined later, maybe this week. Yeah.
I'm going to smoke him. I just crash into him, make him spin out and then beat him. That's my style.
Yeah. Cheat.
It's not cheating. It's part of it's the game. It's like on, what's that movie? Oh, Days of Thunder. What do they call it? Like rubbing is racing or racing is rubbing or something like that. It's just part of the game, man. You don't like the game, just stay off the track, because that's how I roll. How was your Christmas?
That's funny. It was good. We have usually a lot of family over. It was good. Blessed, grateful. It's a good time of season to, to reflect a little bit about what we have and think about others. And so Asia always does a really good job at making sure that we're not focused on ourselves and, thinking about other people. Yeah. And so we had a couple opportunities, I think, that were really great for the kids. Every year lately, actually the last few years, Asia has made a post on social media saying, hey, what families need help that my network or my circle knows about. Mm-hmm. And then she figures out who those people are. And then also coordinates, all right, who wants to give.
That's
and
cool.
Gathers all this stuff. And then we have the kids go out and drop all that stuff off on Christmas Eve. And there's so great opportunities for the kids to drop some stuff off with, in particular, this one lady that had a stroke and her husband's in and out of work, and they're super emotional and just super grateful. And you know what I mean? It's just so great to have the kids see that, right? And for them to like, yeah, you know what? We are truly blessed and kind of deal in some reality a little bit. So
it's good. My wife and I were talking about it. Every year she bakes cookies and puts together little snack things and whatnot for a bunch of families, mostly like friends and neighbors and things like that. And then every year we have, I don't know, anywhere from 10 to 15 people bringing snacks and goodies and whatever.
Dropping off on the door. Yeah.
And look, I love it. I really do. So I'm not being unappreciative of that. But my wife and I were talking last night and I got thinking, we probably spent, I don't know, $150 maybe dollars or so on chocolate and Rice Krispies and cookie batter and dough, like all this stuff. And then all these other people spent probably the same amount, a couple $100 on the same stuff. And then they give it to me and I'm like, I don't really need this stuff. Like I'm not hurting financially. I don't need a bunch of snacks and goodies and candy as it is. Like, I don't need this stuff. I think maybe we should just take that 100 or that 150 or $200 we're spending on giving to like 50 people and just go out and buy like 5 or 6 big hams and give them to the homeless shelter or some charitable organization or a church in our area, or like give it to somebody who needs it. Like, I don't need a bunch of Rice Krispie treats on the counter for the next 2 months, but there's a family out there who needs a ham for Christmas dinner and for leftovers for the next 3 weeks.
Yeah.
I kind of feel like we missed the boat a little bit on that. And we didn't do what was right with our resources from that standpoint. So I don't know. I've been thinking about that. My wife and I have been thinking about that. And I think that's what we're going to do next year.
Maybe mix it up a little bit.
I would challenge
Yeah.
everybody else to do that. Like, you don't need, I know you
Yeah.
love me. You don't need to send me Rice Krispie treats. Like, I get it. We're friends. We're neighbors. Like,
Yeah.
cool. Go save that money, give it to somebody who needs it. That's going to be way better spent than spending it on me and the 50 other people you feel obligated to go visit on Christmas.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Well, you guys are better than us because I made homemade caramel and I did cross my mind to share with my neighbors. And I was like, no, I'm keeping this for myself. And I shared with no one.
Candy's not a draw
like,
for me though. I don't have a sweet tooth. I have a
really?
like a carb tooth.
Man.
Yeah, dude. If you put bread, pasta, chips, yeah, carbs, 100%. Rolls, yeah. You put candy in front of me, I'm like, I'm not that interested.
See, I have both problems because we even had cinnamon rolls. No joke. Christmas.
Oh yeah, cinnamon rolls.
Christmas, sure. I ate 5 cinnamon rolls.
Well played. Well played. I know.
I'm like, oh my goodness, I'm gonna be so sick. I was thriving. I was like, I need real food. By dinner time, I was like, real food, just some real food, because I'm making myself sick. So anyhow.
Well, all right, let's get into it today, man. This is I believe this is the last Ask Me Anything of the year. So let's end things in style. You and Sean did a great job last week, by the way. So appreciate you guys holding down the fort and doing more than that. Super just holding down the fort. Yeah.
Always fun to chat with Sean. The funny part was, assuming that you listened, I had no idea that Sean was LDS until
are you serious?
Recording. Yeah, I had no idea. I was like, oh, you're LDS. That's funny.
Well, so, he's in California, so you had your preconceived notions about him just because he lives in California.
Yeah, totally.
All right, let's get into it, brother.
All right. Brian Reynolds. So we're fielding questions from Facebook. Join us there, facebook.com/group/orderman. Brian Reynolds. I mean, legit hardcore question here. So we're just going to dive right into these.
All right.
Dealing with the loss of a parent, recommendations.
I just grieve, man. Like, it's interesting. We get so caught up in the self-development space and like, what book do you have? And what podcast and what recommendation and what email series and what course and what conference and what this and what that. And it all serves its purpose. But sometimes you don't need a book. You don't need advice. You don't need a podcast. You don't need a course. You don't need this. You don't need that. You just need to grieve, and go through that grieving process, deal with it, internalize it, get the closure that you need physically, mentally, emotionally. I would also say as a man, we ought to help other people do that too. And that actually helps me during the grieving process is if I can help my kids get through it or my loved ones get through the loss of somebody that's important to them, then it gives me meaning to be able to help them grieve properly and go through the process. But I don't really think that we need to strategize it. And I don't think he is necessarily, but I just think just be present, don't worry about what books or what advice or what, just be present, help those under your care, work through the grieving process in very much the same way. And just know it's going to take time and that's not fun. It's not comfortable. It's natural and it's good. And it's the way it is. So be a patriarch, lead your family well through this rough time and take care of yourself. And grieve. It's okay. Just grieve. That's it.
Part of what I'm curious, Ryan, is, and I'm not sure if you're saying this or not, but we all grieve in our own way. So don't latch on to the idea that like, this is the proper way to deal with this and that you might have your own way and that's okay.
Yeah. I mean, we all have our own way of doing it, but we know psychologically that the grieving process is a process. And I'm not a psychologist, so I won't even pretend to know what that technical process for grieving is. But I think generally we all go through the same series, like denial and then acceptance. And then there's going to be anger. Why did you leave me? So there's going to be a whole broad array of emotions. And I think that's pretty universal. The way that we express those emotions, that's what I think is up for interpretation and a little bit subjective. So just let it be okay. Let it be okay. I actually talked about this on my podcast with my son. So it's Brecken's podcast called Man in the Making. It's officially out right now. And the episode that we're releasing this week, we actually went through and talked about the loss of his dog. So please don't misunderstand me. I'm not comparing the loss of of a human, whoever that loved one is in your life, to the loss of our dog. I don't want it to come across like that at all, because it's not. I'm just illustrating a point here. But we talked about dealing with that loss, and he got pretty emotional actually on the podcast itself. And it was okay. We talked about crying, and I'm like, is it okay to cry? He says, yeah, it's okay to cry. I said, yeah, when it's appropriate. And this is an appropriate time. If you're in the middle of doing work and you've got things to get done, crying is not going to help or even be any sort of productivity. But in the right moments, at the right times, in the right circumstances, 100% it's appropriate. So yeah, I'm not going to tell you what it's like to grieve for you, but just allow yourself to experience those emotions and be there for other people.
Don't avoid them. Yeah. Like embrace it.
Yeah. I mean, that's another problem that we see in self-help, is especially in the man space, whatever you want to call it, is so many guys are like, oh, we're not going to be emotional. We're going to be stoic. Guys, like, you have emotions. But here's the interesting thing about it. The more that you try to repress and suppress and keep those things down and not show and not use your emotions as any sort of factor in your life, the worse it actually gets.
Yeah.
Because now you've repressed
anyway.
them.
Yeah.
It's going to show up. Not only is it going to show up anyways, it's going to show up 100 times worse than it would have if you would have just dealt with it. Hey, I'm sad. Hey, I'm glad. I'm jealous. I'm mad. I'm angry. I'm happy. I'm whatever. Express it in a constructive, healthy way. Because if you don't, it's going to be worse. And then you're going to be emotional anyways. Like you're never going to get out of being emotional. It's not that. It's about the way that we respond to emotion, not the fact that we're emotional creatures.
Yeah. Copy. Eric Brandon Ballard, with your retail management experience, you know that the day-to-day priorities can shift quickly. How would you adapt your planning to this style of work? I've tried multiple times to make it fit, but I have trouble making this work. I'm hoping you can shed a different perspective on how I might make this work.
I wish there was a more specific example in this, because you're right. It can
I was kind of like,
day to day.
Yeah.
So guys, if let this be a little bit of a reminder here. If you have questions, like, you don't need to give us your entire backstory. We don't need that, because we can't get to that, but give us the specific as much as you can, so that I can give you a more honest answer. I don't know if it'll be right, but it'll be honest.
Yeah. The most detail he gives really is just day-to-day priority shifting. So like just maybe a scenario by which, one day your priorities are one thing and the next day the priorities are just drastically different.
Yeah. Just embrace that mindset. That to me is just making a decision before you get into work and knowing that, hey, here's my goals. Here's what I want to accomplish. Here's the priorities as they stand right now. And then just be open. That's the biggest thing. Because what a lot of guys will do is they'll be so rigid with their planning that the slightest little thing that deviates from that plan, the plan shatters. You could look at a building, for example. Have you ever been in a skyscraper? You're on the 60th floor and you could feel the building moving a little bit. Have you experienced that?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's actually supposed to do that. It's supposed to move a little bit, because if it doesn't move and there's some sort of force exerted against it, whether it's an earthquake or high windstorms, and it doesn't flex and bow a little bit, it's going to fall down. It's going to shatter and crumble and break. The same thing with the flagpole. We have I think it's a 25 or 30 foot flagpole in our front yard. It's made of fiberglass. I watch it. We get high winds right here. I watch it. The thing flexes and bows, but it doesn't break. It just flexes and bows and moves with the wind. It's supposed to be like that. Instinctively, you might say, well, it just needs to be rigid and firm and not movable. No, if it did that, it would break against the forces that are going to work against it on a daily basis. And the same is true about your schedule, whether it's retail or Kip, what you're doing, or what we're doing here with a podcast, or being a father. One of my kids in the next hour could be having those trike races in the barn and, run into a beam and have a concussion or fall off and break their arm, and like, what does that do to my schedule? Well, if it's so completely rigid that I can't function outside of that, I'm doing the people I'm trying to lead a disservice. So I come in with my plans and with my strategies, ready to go, ready to execute. And if everything works seamlessly that day, and sometimes it does, perfect. I'm ready for it. If things don't, I'm also ready for that, at least mentally. And one tactic that I employ is that, and I learned this in my financial planning practice, what I was doing is I would I would try to like schedule my meetings like back to 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 be as efficient as possible. Doctors do this too. And if you're a doctor and you're listening to
That's
this,
why you're always late.
listen to me right now. And I'm not going to insult you. Listen to me, doctors, dentists, chiropractors, veterinarians, etc. I get it. I understand what you're doing. I appreciate what you're doing. You're trying to be efficient, but you're actually being an asshole. Because if the first person of the day shows up 5 minutes late, or you go 5 minutes longer because you actually hopefully care about that person, your patient, what does that do to the rest of the meetings? Now everybody else is late because you couldn't manage your schedule correctly. Shame on you. Okay. So what I started doing in my financial planning practice, if I knew my meetings would go for about an hour, let's say, I would always schedule meetings on the every 90-minute blocks. So I'd give myself a 30-minute buffer before and after for some of these contingencies. People show up late, it happens, or I get a little long-winded like I am right now. It happens. And I know that. So I plan that into my schedule. So this is a 3-step formula. Number 1, plan your day. Number 2, build in buffers in case things change. Number 3, do the review after the day. So as the priorities changed throughout the day, you can shift and make a game plan and a strategy for tomorrow. That's the 3-part formula for dealing with any uncertainty in life.
Yeah, I like that. One thing I've learned, Ryan, is that buffer after meetings. What I've done too, when I go back to back, is 6 p.m. will come and I'll be like, shit, I discussed a whole lot of things during some of those meetings. I didn't like have time to write down things because I was jumping in between meetings. And now I'm trying to remember what the action items were or the follow-up items. So I never even gave myself time to properly even do follow-up. And so it hurts you, not just from even if you're rigid and you're able to get on time to all those meetings, you don't have the time to actually do proper follow-up after the meetings when you're going back to back too. So that's something I've been trying to give myself that time so I can do follow-up notes and, or, take necessary notes around, what needs to be tackled or, what I mean? Whatever, right. Kind of brain dump a little bit. So,
well, you've been doing it over the past 2 weeks. You've been sending me an email after every time we talk, and then you pull it up before we're talking. You're like, hey, here's the 3 things we talked about. Here's 5 things that came up that we haven't talked about. And so you might think, well, that's going to take me longer because I have to do those notes afterwards. And maybe it does take you longer, but it's more efficient.
Yeah. Cause I'll forget half of that if I wait until the end of the day. Yeah.
Right. And then we'll have to deal with it when it's a problem instead of dealing with it when it's not a problem right now and get out ahead of it. So yeah, quicker doesn't mean more efficient. It doesn't mean more effective. Sometimes it means actually the exact opposite of that. And you end up undermining yourself because of it. So give yourself some margin because things will happen. Cool. They will.
All right. Alex Gutierrez, dealing with prior emotional trauma, often known as PTSD, and how to heal and move forward. I did it, and I can give you info if you want to talk about it sometime, but wanted to know your thoughts.
Whatever I could give you would be really, really basic. I think if you're having some sort of emotional trauma based on past experiences, whether that's PTSD or whatever, you need to go visit somebody who's a professional. And that's not me. Yeah. I can give you my advice. I can give you my input. I think generally, I actually mentioned this to somebody in the Facebook group today because they were saying that they were dealing with, what were they dealing with? They were dealing with a stressful situation in their business. And they said, well, I didn't cause the problem, but I'm going to be suffering because of it. And this individual was the owner of the business from what I gathered in the post. And I said, well, I mean, the first thing you need to realize is that you actually did cause the problem. I mean, you hired the guy who had the issue. He's following your system, or alternatively, he's lacking the training needed to follow your system. So you did cause it. And the fact that you're denying it is going to keep you from, quote unquote, and this is the term he used, dealing with the stress of it.
Yeah. Or growing and not having this happen again. Yeah.
Well, but that's how you deal with the stress of it. Yeah. So I think this is different between the sexes. So women, I think generally, because they're more empathetic, again, generally, they're more relational in nature. that they can actually talk about an issue, and just the fact of talking through it with another woman because of the empathy and the relational nature of who they are as women is actually going to help. But men generally, we tend to operate more in action oriented things, meaning we're getting things done, and we take pride not necessarily in the relational, but in the quantifiable. Hey, I fixed it. So for a man, how does a man deal with stress? He figures out what's stressing him out. Let's take something as innocuous as you know. I don't want to call this guy out, so I'm trying to be a little broad here. Something not going correctly at work, and then figuring out what the problem was, and then you come up with a solution for it, and then you do it and you implement it, and then the stress is gone. Like you alleviate the stress.
Yeah. Like once you even have the plan, like once at least for me, once I confirm my understanding of the issue and I have a game plan. Now, don't get me wrong. We need to act on the game plan, but the stress almost goes away once I have a plan. Like once I'm like, okay, this is what I'm going to do. I got a path moving forward. Like at that point, I'm like, oh, no longer stressed. I'm addressing the issue, you know?
I agree. You're moving in the right direction. I feel that way. Like right now I'm in the process of writing a book, and admittedly over the past couple of days, I've slacked off a little bit because of Christmas, and that's on me. Like I'm not blaming that on anybody or anything. That's on me. I decided not to because of this. I would like to blame other factors, but it's me. Okay. So I've been stressed out over the past couple of days. My wife and I have talked about it. I'm like, I'm a little stressed because I haven't done this. And I got in the office this morning. I'm like, okay, well, the way to alleviate your stress is just to catch up.
Yeah.
Like that's it. So I got in this morning, sat down, did my planning, because I do planning every single morning without fail, did my planning. And then I sat down and I cranked out about 1,600 words. My goal is to write 1,000 words per day. When I get off this call, I'm going to write another 500 to 800 words today. So I'll be well over 2,000 words.
Day.
Yes. And guess what? I feel better. Okay. Now, with that said, I don't know how relatable that is to some traumatic experience. If you've been, for example, sexually abused as a child, I don't know that just identifying the problem and coming up with a solution and then doing it is going to work through some of that trauma. Like there's going to be some real difficult times. And that's why I say, find a professional to work with, to work you through these things so you can get it out of your system. You can talk about this in a positive, constructive way. And I think also a therapist is probably going to help you come up with a game plan so that you can deal with it moving forward when you're feeling traumatized or you run across something that triggers a response based on an experience you may have had 20 years ago. That therapist is going to give you some tactics and strategies to be able to deal with it. So I don't think the process is different, but the way that somebody might be able to go through it with you is.
Yeah. Copy. Gary Hearn, what does the Bible say about being a man versus what the modern world says?
Well, look, here's what I think is the biggest lesson regarding not just masculinity, but just adulthood in general is take responsibility for your life. You know, we all have gifts and talents and abilities, and we all have hands that were dealt, some good cards, some not so good cards. But it is what it is. And it's on you now to take that hand that you're dealt and to maximize it, to take the gifts and the talents and the abilities that you have and to leverage them for productive outcomes for yourself and for the people that you have a responsibility for. And so I would say the biggest lesson of the Bible and the gospel in general is personal responsibility. You're going to be called to task on what you did in this life. You're going to be asked about what did you do to magnify your gifts, talents, and abilities? How did you serve other people? How did you help other people learn about me and return home? Those are the questions that we're going to be asked. Now you contrast that with modern society and modern culture, and it's, hey, you know, like if life's hard, we're going to help you. And, oh, you know, you made a mistake. And so let me slap your hand at worst and wrap my arm around you and give you a hug and tell you why all of your poor performance and behavior is acceptable and okay, because I don't want you to feel bad. This is a very interesting thing that people, they have this, and I think this is more modern Christianity than anything. They have this really weird notion of Christ as being this like really kind of just casual, laid back, like peace and love hippie guy. Like that's not who Christ was. He was passionate. He was convicted. He was principled. He was truthful, even at the risk of not only making people feel bad, but at the risk of his own life. This was a principled, convicted, independent man. This wasn't some peace and love hippie who just wanted everybody to feel good about themselves.
Yeah.
No, this was somebody who said, hey, you're wrong. You're sinning. And here's what, and he didn't leave it there. He said, but here's what you can do to fix it. Here's the path that you can walk to improve. Here's how you can make something better of yourself. Here's how you can serve other people. But society, modern culture, I call it the doctrine of popular culture, doesn't teach that. It teaches there are no consequences for your decisions. There's no consequence for your behavior. If something's wrong with your life, it's not because of you. It's because somebody or something did something to you. You're the victim. And that to me is antithetical to what the gospel is all about, what the Bible and God teaches.
Yeah. I like it. To add to it, I think the other thing, a big difference between the world and the Bible, I'd say is your value of where it sits. I think that's the other thing that just really resonates for me is our divine nature is made present in the Bible, and who you really are and what your potential is. And the world says, oh no, it's the approval of man, Ryan, that makes you valuable. It's financial gain and it's worldly things is what makes you valuable, not who you are as an individual, not service of other individuals, not, your divine nature as a son of God. Right. So, I would add, I think that's at least what came to mind when I think about this question.
Well, I think you're right. And I think human value in general, the value of human life, popular talk about abortion. You're going to kill a baby in the womb because you don't value human life. Oh, but Ryan, what about the mother? What, like, her body, her choice. So you're going to choose to kill a human because you're not comfortable with the decision that you made? Oh, but then there's rape and incest. Yes, I know. But does that make killing a baby acceptable or justifiable? No, of course it doesn't. So there's the value of human life. There's another thing here too, that some people know, if you've been following for any amount of time. I would encourage you guys to go look at a document and just type this in, the family proclamation. And you can type that into your Google search bar and you're going to find this. It's an LDS message from the first presidency. And I can't remember what year that came out, but it's called the family proclamation. What's that?
I said, we're old. It was a long time ago.
It was a long time ago. Family proclamation. And so if you don't know, our motto is protect, provide, preside. Well, if you go read that document, those 3 words are in that document. Yeah. What are men to do? We're to protect, provide, and preside. And then it also talks about the role of a good mother and a woman in society and in her family and culture in general. And so it talks about nourishment and being nurturing and supportive. So go take a look at that, because that's shaped a lot of the way that I view masculinity in general. So much so that that's our motto and that's where it's derived from.
Yeah. Paul Sanote, thoughts on how to define having enough and being humble without getting complacent. If I'm always getting after it, it makes what I have feel like it's not enough. And I think I like this question. Asia and I were just talking about this literally like yesterday about, I don't know, like I'm always like getting after it. And I think because of that, I'm not grateful. You know what I mean? And I'm focused. I don't know. I'm curious what your thoughts are on this.
Yeah, this is a question that we get a lot, right? What's the balance between having enough and then being driven and motivated and not complacent? I would tell you this generally, just very broadly and generally, that it's the line is when you cross from healthy to unhealthy. So if you're so fixated on what you don't have and what you want that you are willing to hurt other people, that you're willing to railroad other people, that you're willing to neglect other obligations that you've assigned yourself to, like your family, for example.
That are higher priority. Yeah.
I don't know if they're higher. I'm just saying, you, like, when you agreed to marry a woman and have kids, you made an obligation, a responsibility, a contract, even if it's just written, or excuse me, verbalized, that she's a priority and your family is a priority. And if you're out there chasing the dollar at the expense of that, then that's a problem. That's an unhealthy way of ambition and drive and inspiration. Now, contrast that with what I try to be. I'm not always the greatest at this,
yeah.
but I want to build this movement. I want to grow this organization. I want to write a book. I want it to be a New York Times bestseller. I want to make more money. Like, these are all things that I have desires to do, but I have to juxtapose that with my other priorities and obligations, like my family. And I have to keep that in check. And there has been times in my life where I've throttled back opportunities. I've said no to things that could advance the mission or the business, but wouldn't necessarily advance my ability to lead my wife and children well. And so you have to figure out when it's healthy and unhealthy. And I would say motives are going to help you determine that. So if your sole objective is to build wealth and have cars and experiences and houses and verified on Twitter so that other people can look at you and think how great you are, that's probably not a great motive. That's an unhealthy motive.
Yeah.
Alternatively, if your motive is, I want to be here, I want to serve people, I want to give them the tools they need to be able to be effective in their own lives, I want to put some food on the table so that I can do that for my family and lead them effectively and preside over them. I want to have also some money and opportunity so we can create some experiences where they'll get to experience life and they'll get to learn lessons and have exposure to people they wouldn't normally have exposure to. Those are all healthy motives. Those are good things. But that takes an honest assessment, because it's very easy to trick ourselves and to say, no, I'm doing it. I'm doing it for my family.
My intention is good. Yeah.
Are you though? Like, we don't know. And you might not fully know, but you really have to spend some time thinking about it. So I can't tell you it's the hard and fast rule. Like, once you make 7 figures, then anything over that is just being greedy. I don't know. I don't necessarily, I think it could be, but I don't think it necessarily inherently is. It's all about your motives, and only you can really look into your heart and determine if your motives are healthy or they're unhealthy.
How does that trigger for you, Ryan? Like, is there something you're doing on a regular basis, or is there some type of trigger in your thought process where you're like, oh, wait, I need to evaluate my motives at this moment? Or is this part of just your end-of-day process? Like, how are you getting to that point where you're doing that evaluation, ensuring that your motives are pure?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So yeah, definitely I build it into my after action review process where I think about why I'm doing the things I'm doing, but it's become so ingrained into the way I view my life that I can actually do it now in real time. So to give you an example, the other day, my second son, he said, "Hey dad, do you want to," what did he say? He said, I think he said, "Do you want to build Lego?" He either said, "Do you want to build Legos or do you want to wrestle?" I can't remember, because those are common phrases in our house. And so he said one of those things. And I said, "Yes, I do want to do that. I have to do a couple of things. And then in a half an hour, I'm all yours." And he's like, "Cool, that's fine." Those are boundaries. Those are healthy, appropriate boundaries. So I came upstairs, I did a little work, about a half an hour, and I was looking at the clock. I'm like, "Okay, it's my time to go down." I told him I would. So I ran downstairs, and as I was going downstairs, I got a text from somebody, and the text said, "Hey, do you have a time for a call? I need to talk with you." And so I was like, "Yeah." So I got downstairs and I said, "Hey, bud, I got to get on a call because it's important. But as soon as I'm done, then I'll play with you."
Yeah.
And he said something. He said, he's the way, but it was the way he said it. He said, "Is it important?" That's what he said. He said, "Is it important?" And I said, "Yeah, it is important." And then I was like, "But that doesn't mean that I can't take it in a half an hour or an hour." And so I caught myself in real time and I said, "You know what, buddy? Yeah, it is important, but it's not as important as you. So let's go play." And I put my phone away because I was present enough to realize, like, yeah, it doesn't make it less important, but that was my priority. And that's what I said I was going to do. So there's also the concept of just being a man of your word. Like
Yeah.
I didn't give this person who messaged me my word that I would jump on a call with them at 2 p.m. in the afternoon, but I
Yeah.
did give my son my word that I would be there and ready for him. And so I was glad I made that decision because I think it really meant a lot to him.
Yeah,
So
for
so
sure.
the answer to your question, the after action review, and then just being present in the moment to the cues, the subtle cues, and sometimes the not so subtle cues that are there and present that'll help you make better decisions.
Right. I think a common pitfall I fall into that I think might be valuable to some guys is I think today's the exception. Like in that example, I'll fall into the thought process of, hey, buddy, I got to really do this thing. Today's a crazy day, right? Like that
Mm,
today is some kind of unique, stressful day, but tomorrow, you know what I mean? I'll be on top of things better.
yeah,
And the reality of it is like tomorrow's never any different than today,
that's worse.
and I have to remind myself is like, it's really it's saying it a different way. What you already said is being present. That's really what that is like, hey, this is my time to wrestle and play with them. That's being present. There is not a tomorrow, and I mean that in the sense of that's not a guarantee. All you have is the moment and honoring your word to that point. So
Right.
something I have to remind myself of.
Me too. Well, there's also a lot of inefficiencies in our lives. Guys, here's a challenge for you today, you can start it today or tomorrow. Just start it right now, actually. Just get a notepad out. And I always have a notepad in front of me. Get a notepad out and just write down everything that you do and what time you start and what time you end. I'm talking about even going to the bathroom to
Yeah.
take a shit. Like,
Yeah.
write it down because that time in the bathroom is significantly longer than it needs to be. I know that. Okay. You're on Facebook at 11:30 and you thought you were on there for 10 minutes. You look at the clock. Oh, it's 12:45. But you weren't on there for 15 minutes. You were on there for an hour and 15 minutes.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. You punch that snooze button on the alarm clock. You're supposed to get up at 6, but you actually got up at 6:30. So there's 30 minutes. There's 30 minutes on the toilet. There's an hour on so I just gave you 2 hours every single day that you didn't have before. Yeah. You're welcome, by the way. Every day, I guarantee you could all find an hour to 2 hours. And what could that hour to 2 hours be doing? Well, a lot of things. You could write more on the book that you're trying to write, or you could go wrestle with your kid for a half an hour or play with them for an hour and then take another hour and go have, a quickie with your wife and be intimate with her or take her to lunch. Like there's a lot of other things.
Yeah.
What's that?
Get a workout in.
Get a workout. Nah, you don't want that. There's a lot of guys. There's a lot of things is the point that we're making on a daily basis. And you're letting it slip through your fingers. You don't even realize it. We actually do the same thing with money. So as a former financial advisor, this is something that happens all the time is you think you have your money dialed in, but what you don't take into consideration is that Diet Coke or that coffee you go out and get in the morning. The fact that instead of going home or having a packed lunch or doing some sort of meal prep is that you go out and you eat every day. And that costs you $27 instead of costing you $3 or $4 like it should. We do the same exact thing. So in this planner that I reference quite often, the first page right there says that which is measured improves. That which is measured improves. So if you want to deadlift more, or you want to be better at jujitsu, or you want to have sex more often, or you want to play with your kids more frequently, or you want to be more productive at work, just measure it. That's the starting point. And everything will get better. Not by default, but certainly give you the opportunity to be better.
Yeah. By allowing you to see the improvement, but also by informing you that which you are doing that you might be blindsided. Right.
And that's what I tell people. You need to take the blindfold off.
Yeah. But I find it even like I'll use lifting weights as an example. It's really valuable to track. And the reason why is because I know, like sometimes if I don't track what I'm doing, I don't know if that's a new PR or not. And there's a little bit of like mind game that comes into it too, right? You're like, all right, last time I did these curls, I was at this weight and I had 15 reps in. You know what? It's time to bump that up. so I'm in between 10 to 15. So I'm going up to 75, right? Or whatever. And so, but you won't play those games in your head, or at least I won't play those games in my head unless I'm tracking and know where I was last time.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I'm probably doing the same weight as I did last time. And I'm not pushing myself that extra little, area, or that 1% or that 2% more, because I'm unaware of what I did, previously.
Yeah, that gamifying is a powerful strategy. I actually did the same thing this morning. So I told you I really wanted to write a bunch of words. I got what I think like 1,500 or so, give or take, somewhere in there. Maybe a little less, maybe like 1,400. Anyways, I started at 9 o'clock a.m. Or no, was it 9? No, it was 10. I started at 10 and I thought to myself, no, it was 9. I'm sorry. I started at 9. And then I'm like, okay, I have an hour to do this. I have from 9 to 10 o'clock. At 10 o'clock, I got to send a few emails. By the way, this is how I plan out my day, guys.
Yeah.
I always give myself time constraints, always, without fail.
Because you go in Superman mode.
Super drive.
You're like bam, bam,
hyper
bam, bam, bam.
mode.
Hyper focused. Yeah.
Yep. If you don't give yourself time constraints, you won't do it. Your performance will match the time that you have allotted. So if you have 8 hours, it'll take you 8 hours to do the thing. If you have 3 hours, it'll take you 3 hours to do the thing. So I always give myself time constraints. So from 9 to 10 o'clock, I was going to write. From 10 to 10:30, I was going to send emails and do some correspondence. And then from 10:30 to 10:50, I was going to do make some payments, just some financially related stuff, tax stuff, things like that. Noticed I gave myself the least amount of time to do that. And then I knew, okay, I'm going to get ready for this call, you and me, at 10:50. So I'll give myself 10 minutes. And that's kind of how I had it scheduled. Well, from 9 to 10 o'clock, I knew exactly. I started at 9:02. I wrote 1,400 words in an hour. I've never done that before. Never. That's a lot of words to write in an hour. Yeah. But it was that way because I tracked it and I knew I wanted to hit it, and I gave myself the time constraint to do it. And it isn't any surprise to me that I wrote so many words in that time frame. And then I felt really good because I'm like, oh, cool. My goal is to write 2,000 words. All I have to do is write another 600 words today. Now I get to my emails. Oh, all my emails are caught up. I always try to keep my emails under 10 that are sitting in my inbox. So I have less than 10 now. Good there. I did all my correspondence with the Iron Council, messages and things like that. So I messaged a few people, reached out to a couple of guys I know are struggling right now, sent them some messages. And then I went to the tax and financially related stuff, got some of that. Dude, I feel good. I feel super good today because I've been so productive on all this stuff because I gamified it.
Yeah, totally. Cal Newport's book's like a great one on this subject.
Yeah. Deep work.
Deep work. And I really love, even Atomic Habits. I guess we could throw out tons of resources around this, but I even have a cube, Ryan. It's a square cube and it has 15, 30, 60, and 5, I think, numbers on the cube. And if I take the cube and I plop it so 10 or 15's on top, then it's an alarm for 15 minutes.
Oh, that's cool.
And it'll go off in 15. If I switch it over to 30, then it's the 30-minute. And it's the same thing. Like, I'm like, all right, email, 30 minutes, and you're trying to bang through it as fast as possible before that stupid alarm goes off. It sounds cheesy, but man, it's so valuable, mostly because and we all have had these experiences where you had, 15 minutes to do something that you were probably needed an hour to do. And you somehow magically got it done in the time that you had. And it's because there was no options and you were hyper focused and you're like, holy crap, that was awesome. That's what we're talking about. That's what we're being intentional about it. So that way you can get that level of productivity without procrastinating, and not giving yourself any time, but
what I really think it is that you actually didn't need an hour, but you were lying to yourself. Well, you can do one of two things. I'll be a little bit more gracious, I should say. You either A, lying to yourself, or you're just ignorant about it. You didn't really know.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
But either one, you have to measure it to actually determine, oh, that's not an hour task. That's actually a 20-minute task. And then make it 20 minutes.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
Cool.
All right. Alan Placer. When do you know it's time to step past your fears into a new venture, whether it be marriage, new career, and etc.?
I think it always is. Like if you feel like something's calling to you, then you have to step past the fear. Now you don't have to take a headfirst dive into the deep end. That's not what I'm saying.
How do you know it's calling for you? How do you know there's a calling?
It just
I think that's the
is.
term you used.
It just is. Like
if it's on your mind,
then it's calling to you.
Hmm.
I think we have this preconceived notion that, and I've said this before, that your calling or the thing that you're supposed to be doing, when the clouds part and the angels make themselves appear and they start singing hallelujah. No, like
I've been waiting for that, but
right. Keep waiting. I haven't seen that yet.
Yeah.
So how do you know it's calling to you? If it sounds interesting. Small example. My wife for years has been saying, just kind of half jokingly, kind of casually, I want to learn how to play the banjo. And every time she says it, I'm like, do it. Like, let's get a banjo. Let's do it. And she's like, no, I'm busy and I got this. And yeah, of course, like we're all busy. Of course, I get it. You are. And so for Christmas, I actually got her a banjo. And that was the gift that I gave to her for Christmas. And so I gave her this banjo, and like, you should have seen the light in her eyes, and like her whole demeanor was just positive and uplifted for a banjo. I think it's kind of silly. Most people listening to this probably think, banjo, that's weird. That's kind of silly. It doesn't matter. It's her thing. And she was so excited to get that. Now, is that like her calling in life? Is she going to just be a professional banjo player? Yeah, probably not. But it's calling to her. It doesn't mean that it's going to like move her into this thing that she's supposed to do with the rest of her life, but there's something about it that she feels compelled to do. And so she should do it now, and you should do it. That said, I don't need to burn the bridges just because I'm taking a step into the unknown. And that's the differentiating factor. That's where I said, you don't need to jump head first into the pool, into the shallow end of the pool, hoping you can swim or that you'll survive. No, I didn't do that with a podcast. When I started the podcast, it was like, oh, you should do a podcast. Okay, sounds good. And so I started a podcast. But I kept my financial planning practice. I didn't like give the middle finger to all of my clients and say, you're all on your own, suckers. I'm starting a podcast. I was like, most of my clients didn't even know for months and months and months that I was doing something over here on the side, not because I was hiding it from them, just because it was something I was doing on the side. I don't explain what I had for dinner to all my clients either.
Yeah.
But I was willing to do it and to try it. And then what ends up happening, one of two things. Either you really feel that it's the right direction for you, and then that voice, that calling that Alan was talking about, it becomes a little bit more pronounced, or it says, just go a little further.
Yeah.
So I started a podcast in, I think it was like 2000. It was either 2013 or 2014. It was called Wealth Anatomy. And it was a podcast for for medical professionals to teach them about their money, because I was a financial advisor at the time. I felt called and compelled to do that. So I did it. And I realized after 20 episodes that I loved the medium of podcasting, but I didn't want to have that same conversation. So then I felt called to pivot, and I created Order of Man. We talked about this in the first episode with my son and Man in the Making. So I created the Order of Man podcast. And then gradually over time, it grew and grew and grew into what it is today, 6 years later. Well, about a year ago, my son and I started feeling really called to explore doing a podcast with him, for him to have his own podcast. And so we just launched last week, Man in the Making. And it was interesting because I was pulling up, it's called Podcast Connect. It's where all of your podcasts that you have show up on the dashboard for iTunes. And my Wealth Anatomy thumbnail is still there, even though the podcast is not live. You can't find it, but the Wealth Anatomy thumbnail is still there. And then the next one is the Order of Man thumbnail. And the next one is the Man in the Making thumbnail.
Yeah. I saw that you posted this on Instagram.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
And I thought, man, what a cool representation of the past 7+ years of work. Yeah. But I never would have been where I am here today if I didn't listen. Well, here's what I was doing. My wife and I were talking about this in bed the other night. because I pulled that picture up and I showed it to her, and she's like, "Oh, that's awesome." We were talking about it in bed, and I said, "Do you really know where this started?" And she's like, I mean, I kind of. And I said, "It actually started before podcasting. So what I would do, the first step into audio information, I guess you'd call it,
Was your
is
CDs, right? That you did.
that's what it was. It was my
Yeah.
CDs. I bought a Blue Yeti microphone. It was like $80 or something. And then I went to Office Max or Staples when we had CDs, and I bought blank CDs. And then I went to, I don't know, some local film studio, picture studio. It reminded me of Napoleon Dynamite with the weird, backdrops. And I was like, is there some sort of vest I can wear? So I go in there and I get my picture taken. And then I took the picture and I bought at Staples or Office Max, I bought blank CD covers.
CD.
Remember? Because you
the
could print
covers,
them?
or did you put labels on the CD?
The labels,
as well,
yeah.
or
The
just
blank.
in
No, the blank labels,
the
and then
circle
I printed
label. Yeah.
the circle label. Yep, and I printed it off, and then I would manually attach the labels to the CDs, and then I would start handing them out to clients. And she's like, "That's right, I remember you doing that." That's where this started. Was it some sort of like grand premonition of what was to come? No, it was like, this would be a cool way to meet new clients, and it worked. And I took another step and another step and another step. So Alan, you're asking, and you've done so many great things because we have this relationship, you and I, but yeah, you're asking, when do you know? You already know. If you're asking the question, you already know. You take a step.
Yeah. And for you young guys, CD is compact disc.
That's
you
right.
Can Google that to learn more.
We were talking
those.
about, so we were talking about that, but then we were talking about, I can't remember exact. So you had floppy disks, and then you had
the 3 1/4 inch floppies and the 5.
No, the big one, the 5-inch, and then the 3.5. Weren't they called like Z disks or Z drives or something? Like,
no, you're
they
talking
were like
about
hard.
a zip drive.
Yes.
Yeah.
Zip drives was next, right?
500 meg. Yeah.
That's right. Oh man. Those were the days.
We had those in college. All your data was on your zip drive. Yeah.
I was asking
Trish,
death. I said, do you still have, or do they still have computer labs? You remember the computer lab? I'm like, do they still have computer labs in college? And she's like, yeah, probably. I'm like, why? She's like, well, just in case anybody needs to go get on the computer. I'm like, well, every person in America has a computer. Like you actually have one in your pocket.
I actually wonder if they do have computer labs.
Her and I were talking about that. I wasn't sure if they did or not still. So,
well,
maybe you guys
can let Ryan know on Instagram if you're in college and if there's computer labs or not at Ryan Nickler. Right. So
that's right.
Interesting. Yeah. Let me know, because I'm curious.
Yeah.
All right. Rudy Van der Viver. Showing up, being there for our families and loved ones. How can men do this with more conviction and confidence? How do we do this with more conviction and confidence?
So when I hear that question, showing up, being there for your family, this is what I call the primary answers. Like, how do you be a better man? Show up for your family. What the hell does that even mean?
Yeah.
I'm not knocking you, by the way. Like, I've said the same thing.
But maybe your answer is define what showing up looks like.
That's the point, right? Because if you hear all this stuff, like we hear all these little quips, and you have these, these quotes on Instagram and Twitter, and it's like, show up,
rise up, man,
work hard, be there for your family, love them unconditionally. It's not wrong, but it's also not great advice, because it isn't really that specific. I do that too, because I got 140 characters to make a point on Instagram, right? So what I would suggest to you is, what was the phrase that he used? Be there, show up.
Showing up, be there for family and loved ones.
What does that mean? And the way also the way that I show up for my family is going to be different than the way that you show up for your family. I've got 4 young kids. My wife is a homemaker. She's at home. That's probably not your circumstance, or maybe it is. I don't know. It's probably different. So what I would say to you is not great advice. Like, my kids are different than your kids. My wife has different goals than your wife has. We have a different dynamic in our family than you do.
Different love languages. Yeah. Different needs. Yeah.
So let's break down show up first. Let's talk about that. Show up. How? My son, my oldest son, he wants me to show up by talking about hunting. Usually it's outdoor involved, or lifting. He loves to lift. Like usually it's revolving around that. My second son, he likes to build Legos. He's very analytical. His mind works that way. So he likes to draw. He likes to code on the computer. He likes to do Legos. My daughter, very empathetic, very nurturing, very sweet, really wants to make people feel good and to let them know they're loved and they're important. This is how she manifests itself. And so I will need to sit down with her. And typically it's her and I working on a craft for somebody else. Like, hey, I want to make mom this picture frame. Can you help me do that? Or, Dad, I've got my doll house, but my dolls need this living room set up this particular way. And so we need to build, I need a little block of wood so my dolls have a table that they can have dinner on, right? Like, okay, then that's what we're going to do. My youngest, his phrase is, Dad, can we wrestle? And so he's all about physicality, physical interaction. He's 100 miles an hour. And so we go into the front room and I have mats. We bought mats from Amazon, couple $100 at most, and they're foldable mats. So we fold them out, fold them up, put them away every time and lay them out, turn the heater on in the front room because it's the front deck that's been covered in. And we'll go out there and, we'll roll around for a half an hour and we'll laugh and he'll kick me in the ribs and do kamikaze jumps off the top rope. And like, that's his thing. And so showing up is different for all of them. My wife, I just need to sit down and talk with her, undivided attention, sit down, talk with her, ask her about her day, ask her about what she has going on, be interested in the things that she's talking about, whether it's her bees and what she's going to do with them over the winter or what the kids are struggling with at work, and just listen and be there and ask her questions. But I know that because I've answered the question, what does showing up look like for each of my family members individually? And when you know it, to go to your question, you're going to be more confident in showing up the way that matters. And the way you think matters doesn't. The way they think matters is the most important thing.
Totally. One thing I fail to do, I have to be very intentional about this, is how I'm showing up in those activities, right?
Yes.
Like when I hear showing up conviction, it's like this hardcore version of happiness, right? Intentionality, clean, blah, blah. And guess what? It is not fun to be around. I am a walking nightmare, right? And so it is completely possible that I would do, like, in using your examples, I'd be like, all right, let's wrestle and not be fun, right? Or let's get your dollhouse first so I can get this done quick. Yeah. That's not enjoyable. And no one wants to be around me. No one is inspired by me. Just because your kids, like, let's be frank, like I have to remind myself of this. Like, my kids aren't going to go, oh, Dad, you're so productive at work, I want to be like you. It's like, oh no, you're a happy person and you love life and you get after it. Right. Now I want to be like you, so I don't know. I struggle. I struggle being pleasant. Right. When I'm focused on
when there's stuff to get done.
Yeah.
I do too. I'm the same. I think we're very similar in that personality. Well, you started this podcast off with something interesting. You're talking about those little tricycle things that we have in the barn. And so my kids are like, Dad, let's go out on Christmas. Let's go out. I'm like, cool. Let's do it. And I went out there. They're like, they wanted to show me. So I'm like, cool, I'll go out and watch it. And I watched them and they're having fun. And they're like, Dad, now it's your turn. I'm like, oh, like, I can't, how am I even going to get low enough to sit on that thing, let alone fit in it? They're like, do it, Dad, you can do it. I'm like, all right. And like, I lowered slowly myself into it, about tore out my knees in the process and got in there. And I'm like, my son, my oldest, who's almost as tall as me now, I'm like, how do you even ride this thing? He's like, you got to do like this. He's like, lean back. And I'm like, okay. And, it wasn't like the thing I would have picked to do, but it actually ended up being really fun because I got to see how excited they were about it. And it was fun because I was present, like you're saying, present there in the moment, not like, okay, 2 races and then I'm out of here. No, it's like, all right, let's do it. All right, now I want to race you. Okay, now you 2 race. Oh, I beat you. Oh, you beat me. And you just be fully present, engaged in the moment.
Yeah. Yes, you're with them. Yeah,
with them, not just physically, but like mentally, emotionally, right?
Yeah. Engage with them. Yeah.
Engaged. I
I
like
had the
that word
similar
better.
thing. Like I was playing, there's like a new, I guess there's newer versions of Mario Brothers. You know, the typical Mario Brothers where you go from left of the screen to the right and you hit little blocks,
Yeah,
you know, the
of
typical
course.
Mario that we were raised. So I guess there's newer versions of it. And my kids were like, hey, let's play this. Or no, they were like, hey, dad, watch. And it was
You're
the
like,
same way. I didn't
I don't
want to
want to
play.
watch.
Yeah. And I didn't want to watch either. I'm like, I don't want to do anything. Like, play it by yourselves. But I was like, you know what? Give me a controller. Let me play a couple. Right. And the whole time we're like jumping on each other. And you know what I mean? It was
Yep.
fun.
Yeah,
Right. But
exactly.
I totally had to do something that was a waste of my time. Well, but in hindsight, really was it a
No,
waste
I
of
know.
time? The
I,
answer is
we get
no.
you what you're
Right.
saying.
But that's my perception at the time, was like, I have more important things to do. And the reality of it is I didn't. That was the important thing to do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, here,
So
one
hard to
more
do
example.
sometimes.
My wife is really into beekeeping, and I don't like bees. Not that I'm like totally afraid of them, but just stay the hell away from me. And they sting me every time I'm out there. And I'm like, I don't like
It is
bees. And
quite
she's,
fascinating though.
oh, it's extremely fascinating.
Yeah.
Like they're crazy little creatures. And so my wife will ask me, not so much anymore because they're kind of done for the winter. She's getting them all ready and whatnot. But she'll ask me to go out, in the spring, or she'll go out and she doesn't have to ask me. Like I'll say, hey, can I come out with you? And she's kind of surprised and taken back at first because she knows it's not my favorite thing. But she's like, yeah, of course. So we throw the bee suits on and take the side by side out to the bees. And I don't care about the bees. I really don't. It doesn't matter. It's not anything I care about, but I love watching her interact with it. I love how fascinated she is. I love the process. And then when she tries to explain it to me and I don't get it, I'm like, that's cool. Like to see how she
Yeah.
lights up about it. And so the bees aren't the thing. The tricycle isn't the thing. The Mario Kart or whatever isn't the thing. The thing is them. It's be fascinated with them. And I think you'll have an easier time with it.
Yeah.
Take a
For
couple more,
sure.
Kip.
Yeah. I'm struggling with trying to fit in a couple. Anyhow, I'll just go here. Tyler Cross, what's your week look like? No, what's your week look like? What's been the biggest life takeaway lately for you?
Was my
I'm not
week
sure
look
why he's
like?
asking about the week. Yeah, I guess he's curious about what does your week
My
look like,
week
but what's
is
the biggest
this
life takeaway as well?
this week is all about the book. Well, this month I've got to the end of the
Yeah,
month, so
because
that's what it's all about.
because you've set a deadline,
Yep.
right? Where you wanted your draft done by a particular time. And so
Yep.
you're doubling down like, hey, I got to wrap up. This is my commitment that I made.
Right. That's right.
Got it.
So that's what my week looks like. What is my biggest takeaway?
What's been your biggest life takeaway lately?
Oh, lately. Okay. Consistency in action. That things become more efficient, they become more enjoyable, and you become significantly more proficient. So let me just give you a rough example.
If you're being consistent.
Daily consistency.
Got it.
So if you go to the gym every Saturday for 3 hours, it's going to be significantly harder for you than if you go to the gym for 45 minutes every single day. I'm convinced that you'll have less results. I'm convinced that it will be, you'll have to grind through it more. I'm convinced that you won't enjoy it nearly as much, and you will not be as effective and efficient as you could be if you would do it every day for a lesser amount of time. There's two places this shows up for me in my life. Number one, with writing. So because I'm so heavily focused on this book right now, and I told you this morning I started and I wrote 1,400 words in an hour. That was the fastest I've ever done it, ever. Now, fast is not the metric, by the way, but that was very efficient, and more effective. So than ever, because I write every single day. And I felt a little guilty because the last 2 days I missed, but up until that point, I was on like an 11-day streak of writing at least 12 to 1,300 words per day.
So let me clarify, Ryan. What you're saying is your ability to write effectively has increased due to the fact that you're doing it daily. So it's becoming easier and you're becoming more efficient with your writing because it's it's
also more enjoyable. because
Mm.
I used to have to grind. Now I wake up and I'm like, cool, I want to get my 1,000 words in. And like, what am I going to talk about today? And
Yeah.
I've learned little tricks along the way. Like one little trick for writing for me is I'll write a portion, let's say 1,000 words, excuse me. And then before I stop, the last thing I do is give myself 3 or 4 prompts to write on the next time I sit down.
Got it. So you don't lose your thought process of what kind of what's boiling in your head or what
That's right.
naturally at the moment seemed
Yeah.
like the next thing you should
The
write
next
about.
thing, the next evolution of
Got
it.
it.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
writing is one area that's shown up a lot. And then also jujitsu. Like I'm training 4 to 5 days per week. So it's more, I'm getting better, faster. I'll get better if I just go twice a week. Gradually, eventually I'll get better,
Yeah.
but I'm expediting my results. I'm getting faster, better because I can retain information more effectively. I can practice that information more quickly. Like I'll go train with Brian Littlefield, one-on-one coaching with Brian Littlefield once a week. And then that evening, I have the opportunity to go train with the rest of the guys. And I can take what I learned that morning and go apply it even more so that night. And so I'm expediting the result. And then it's just, my body doesn't hurt as bad because I'm moving all the time. I'm more efficient. I learn more. It's just better.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to really figure out ways to implement things on a daily basis, more so than I have in the past.
Let me ask you this. It's related. I am starting to come to the realization, at least for me, that when I kind of come home and I'm grumpy or I'm kind of having a bad day, it's usually because I didn't show up properly in that day.
Yeah.
That I didn't get the things done that I wanted to get done. In your example, I didn't get my writing in. I didn't get my jiu-jitsu in. I wasn't as productive as work as I would like to be. And in most cases, when I walk through that door in the evening, if it's a bad day, it's usually because of a lack of me showing up and being and getting done what I know I should have gotten done earlier in the day. Would you say that's true for you?
100% true.
Yeah.
Without exception, that is 100% true.
Yeah.
So get your shit done.
Yeah. All right. Troy Dodson.
Last 21. Right here, Kip.
Okay. I'm 21 and I'm about to purchase my first home with my new wife. I feel I do pretty well in the protect. He's a BJJ blue belt, does some Muay Thai, shooting guns, and etc. And provide. I have a solid job that has an upward mobility, but I worry that I lack in the preside department. His wife is so much more organized than I am, so she handles the budget and also the majority of cleaning and cooking. I worry because I spend so much time protecting and providing, work 10 hours, come home, go train jiu-jitsu, and etc., that I'm not as present in the home. And sometimes I feel I'm out of the loop with our day-to-day occurrences. Any tips on leading better as we start our young family? I look forward to any input. Thank you, guys.
Yeah. So leaders don't do everything, guys. Like you need to understand that. I think a lot of people believe that, oh, if you're a leader, you have to do it all. No, you just need to ensure it all gets done. So with cooking, I don't do any of the cooking. Like I do zero of the cooking at the house, but I don't feel like I'm being an ineffective leader because of it, because it still gets done. My wife does it. And so my job in that role is to ensure she has everything that she needs in order to cook. She finds value in it. She likes doing it. And so my job is to make it better for her. Same thing at work. If I have an employee, I have to give that employee all the tools and resources so they can perform their functions properly and correctly and have an enjoyable time doing it. I don't have to do it to lead. So when it comes to my wife, I provide the financial resources in the house. You know, she's not working outside of the house. I do that. Okay. She does the shopping, but I'll give input if she needs a new tool or utensil for the kitchen, or she wants ideas. I'll do that. When we're sitting down at the table and eating, although I didn't prepare the food, I can certainly host a discussion with her and the kids, and I can ask about their day, and I could lead and direct and moderate the conversation that we're having as the leader of our home. So there's other ways to do it, but you don't have to do everything. You just need to ensure it gets done. Like one of the things that my family and I do is daily meetings. Well, we've gotten a little behind on that over the past several weeks because it's Christmas time and everybody's busy and excited. It's just life, right? Okay. But I'm the leader. I'm the patriarch of the home. It's my responsibility. And so my wife and I talked about it the other day, and I said, hey, we need to do this. And she says, yeah, but we're busy in this and this and this. And I said, we're doing it. Like, I'm going to find a way that it's going to work with everybody, but this is a non-negotiable. We're doing this. And so I fully anticipate that I'm gonna have to spend a lot of time on the front end, getting everybody in the habit again, really doing most of the heavy lifting when it comes to what we're going to discuss and talk about. But over time, that people will pick up on that. The kids and wife will pick up on that, and then it'll be different. But yeah, don't ever assume that you need to do everything. In some roles, you just need to make sure that you're greasing the groove so everything can get done. And a great leader acknowledges that other people are better at certain things than they are too.
Yeah.
Like, why should I cook the food when I know that she A, enjoys it, B, is way better at it, and C, is much more efficient than I'd ever be able to? Why should I spend all that time doing that? I find no value in it. I'm not good at it. And it would be a miserable experience for everybody. So is it leadership that I do it? No way. It's leadership to say, no, that's not my area.
Yeah.
That's your area.
It's your job. In this example, it's you being a silent leader and ensuring that she has what she needs to do what she wants to do and what she's efficient at doing, and that she has what, the support from you to accomplish said task.
And well, there's another thing with eating too, is like when she's preparing, sometimes she'll have our daughter or one of our kids in there helping, because they enjoy it. They get a lot of value from it. So I like to see their little relationships like that. But other times she just needs the kids out of the way. And so it's like, cool. Me and the kids are wrestling. Me and the kids are doing Legos. Me and the kids are out doing trike races in the barn. Like, cool. That's how I can help. That's how I can serve right now. So although you might not be doing everything, what was the other thing? It was food, cooking, and what? Finances, or what was it?
In budget. Yeah. Budget he mentioned. Yeah.
Okay. So budget. Okay. She's better at it than you. So, okay. Like, you don't need to let that like threaten your fragile ego. Like, okay, so what? Awesome. Like, I think most of us would appreciate a woman who's pretty good with money, that's a good thing. That's a great thing. So get her the information she needs, talk with her about your spending and about what debts you have coming up and what investments you're making and what you're trying to pay off and all this kind of stuff. And then do it.
Yeah.
So that you're supporting her
in it and support her. Yeah.
Well, and then live by your budget. If she says, hey, we can't really spend that much, then don't spend that much, because this is her department. So honor her department and support her. And I use the word edify, which means that you honor her calling, or that you honor what she's doing by listening and applying and being a team player.
Yeah.
And that's, I think, just as much leadership as anything else.
Copy. All right. I mean, we talked about a couple things, but what was the one question someone's going to let you know? Oh, if there's labs in university. Yeah. So
that's right. Yes.
If you want to let Ryan know,
computer labs,
or see him playing on a tricycle, follow him on Twitter and Instagram.
I think Ryan Instagram took it down, actually.
Oh,
they did, because I think we had Cody Jinks playing in the background, and they said, well, that music's copyrighted. I'm like, Cody Jinks would like me playing his music. Why don't you ask Cody if he wants me to take it down?
Yeah. See, I was assuming it was violent or something. Yeah.
Oh gosh. Did you know one time I had a video removed on Instagram because I was wrestling with my son, my youngest son, on the bed, and I suplexed
you tossed him.
Yeah. I did a belly to back suplex on him on the bed into pillows. Heaven forbid a dad play with he was, I think, 3 or 4 at the time. And it got taken down. I can't remember the term they used, but I don't know, violence or something, but somebody probably reported that. Morons.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
It is crazy. So the Iron Council's closed. However, I wanted to kind of give some guys some resources, for some of you guys that are like, hey, I'm going to get on the path for the new year. Would you recommend at least Battle Ready and go to the Iron Council's website and at least subscribe for the next time that we have that open?
Look, Battle Ready is a perfect program right now, because it's a 30-day program designed to get you up and running for your next quarterly plan, which should start January 1st. So we're the end of December right now. If you go to orderofman.com/battle ready, you're going to be immediately enrolled in 17 emails. You're going to get over 30 days that are going to walk you through everything that you need to know about creating your own battle plan so you can crush it in 2022. So that's a great
Yeah.
resource. Also, we talk about in that Battle Ready program, the Iron Council, which, like you said, is not open right now. But if you want to be put on the waiting list when we do open in the early spring, then you could do it through the Battle Ready program, or you can go to orderofman.com/Iron Council, drop your email in there, and as soon as it comes available, we'll let you know.
And a third resource for you guys looking for a mobile app to assist you in the process of working on your battle plans, go to 12weekbattleplanner.com. That's the numbers 12weekbattleplanner.com to download and purchase that app.
We got a lot going on, guys. You
Get
got
on
your
the
marching
path.
orders, get on the path, finish out the year strong. Just don't stop right now. I'm a little backwards. I said you have 30 days. You really only have like 4 or 5 days until the new year.
Yeah.
But
and in the Utah meetup, I was telling guys, like, this is a perfect time to work on your plan this week,
right,
and work out some kinks. So don't wait until the new year. Like, do it today.
That's right. All right, guys. Appreciate you. We will see you on Friday. Until then, go out there, take action, and become the man you are meant to be.